Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Wellness Farmer podcast. I just got back from sipping on some mate. You're gonna have to deal with me for a little while here. I know it's been a little sporadic, the episodes. I am going to get back to doing it weekly soon. Just hold on for a little bit and more than anything, enjoy this latest episode of the Wellness Farmer podcast where your health is our focus. I take what has become too complex and help you by simply focusing on where health is found, inside of you. How do we empower ourselves to feel our best? With chiropractic care, eating nutrient-dense food grown on fertile soil without chemicals, adequate movement, and natural internal dialogue. On this podcast, I put emphasis on growing your own food and storing it using the permaculture and modern survivalism lifestyles. On today's episode 195, I'm actually going to discuss something just a little bit different. So you're going to see on some episodes, I'm going to be talking about some stuff that's just a little bit different. But today I'm going to talk about a book I just got done reading called Solve for Happy by Mo Gawdat. I thought it was a really good read, and I wanted to share some of what I read with you on today's episode. So I am Ben Page, your host, and today is August 13th, 2018. Wow, as time is flying by. So I actually sent a couple of emails. I don't know if you guys got those. Hopefully you opened them. I was trying to give out a free class catered to your information, and those emails were kind of a way to find out who would be in that class. Didn't work out. I mean, I'm telling you this because failures are ways to really use as stepping stones to go to the next point. So that didn't work out. And things are going to continue to come out because that's how we are. We continue to evolve. We try to make things better. Hopefully you enjoyed those emails. If you did read those that I sent out, they will become articles, and I will be sharing them more at different places, but you got those first, and hopefully you enjoyed those emails. Sorry, there's not going to be that special event because I really didn't get much feedback from those emails, but at the same time, I hope you enjoyed them, and it's a stepping stone to the next thing. But there are ways you guys can help me out. You can buy your stuff from Amazon.com, through my website, pastorverdesfarm.com. It's so easy. Just go to my website, and at the right, there's a button. There's an Amazon button. You click on it. More importantly, you can support me by actually, if you haven't already done it, and if you're a new listener, I have a book called The Four Pillars of Health, where it kind of explains in a lot more detail what I talk about on this podcast. You could take the philosophy of health that I have established and actually put it into your life and become who you truly are. So you can get that from Amazon.com, also through my website. It's The Four Pillars of Health. It's digital. You get the book, and you can also get the audio format. So you can do that and really improve your health. And there's another great way. I mean, at the moment, I'm still kind of working into it because I had to take a little pause on doing the podcast. But there's a great way, hopefully, that you'll see that you'll get something out of this podcast that'll make you a better person, and a way to help me, to give me something back, is actually supporting me through Patreon. So patreon.com. But at the moment, like I said, it's been kind of hit and miss with the episodes because I've had other stuff to come on. I've had other stuff come, so I had to kind of let it go to the side a little bit. But it's coming back, and don't worry, the Wellness Farmer podcast is not gone. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this subject, the topic today. So first things first, I know that this podcast focuses on a way to grow your own food, to be as healthy as we can. But the matter of the fact is, health is a lot more than just consuming chemical-free foods grown on fertile soil in the freshest way possible. So I will also be taking on other subjects every once in a while. First off, answering your questions. So if you have a question, I'm going to answer that on one of these episodes. And secondly, what I see affecting so many people, and a lot of the times, even me, so like in today's episode, what I'm going to be talking about. So hopefully you enjoy this episode, and most importantly, take something out of it and apply it to your lives today. So over the last couple of, for a long time, but over the last couple of months, I read a book, and I've been studying about happiness, because what I see more and more is that the internal battle is what makes us so unhealthy. It's that internal environment. We are seeing a lot more disease because of our unhealthy internal situation. So those that have read my book know that my biggest challenge, and actually listen to the podcast because I've talked about it too on the podcast, continues to be that internal battle. And I imagine many of you are in the same situation. So there's a great book that I just got done reading, and like I said, it's called Solve for Happy at the Beginning by Mo Gawdat. I hope I'm saying his last name right. But a lot of the things I read were things that we generally know, but we don't apply them in our lives. And that's the hard part, the action part. What was really cool was his perspective on how one becomes happy. Well, really how one returns to be happy. And something you also see in this book, and I want to talk about more in the future, because I believe this also, is that there's a difference between joy and happiness, and I believe we should talk about that, and I'll probably be bringing that up in future episodes. Hopefully you will agree, and hopefully you'll send me an email saying, yes, do an episode on that, or talk to me on Instagram or wherever I'm at, Ben Page DC Instagram. Let me know. Do you think that would be cool to talk about the difference between what joy and happiness really is? But I've talked about this subject before, but it's great to hear this stuff again and in another perspective, and this perspective from somebody else. So it's one of these great ways to learn. I'm going to be using some quotes from Mo in this book. So hopefully I'll get all those quotations put in so I can give him credit, because it's a great book. So happiness. Let's see how we can more enjoy this ride or game, as he puts in his book, called life. Mo asks a question in his book, why should something so basic be so hard to find? And he goes on to say, this is straight from his book, the truth is, it isn't. We're just looking for it in the wrong places. We think of it as a destination to reach, when in fact, it's where we all began. Have you ever searched for your keys only to realize they were in your pocket all along? Remember how you removed everything from your desk, searched beneath the couch, and got more and more frustrated the longer they went missing? We do the same thing when we struggle to find happiness out there, somewhere. It's got to be somewhere out there. When in fact, happiness is right where it's always been, inside us, a basic design feature of our species, close quote. What a beautiful paragraph in his book, because he uses that great example of when we search for something, but we're searching in the wrong places. And when we actually find it, we're like, wow, it was there the whole time. That's where happiness is. It's always been in the exact same place since we were born. It's something that we were born with. It's a basic design of us. So he goes on to say, look back into your own experience. Another quote from his book. Summon up a time when nothing annoyed you, nothing worried you, nothing upset you. You were happy, calm, and relaxed. The point is, you didn't need a reason to be happy. You didn't need your team to win the World Cup. You didn't need a big promotion or a hot date or a yacht with a helicopter pad. All you needed was no reason to be unhappy. So as he states, happiness is our default state. And we can see that in little children and babies. Babies, little children, they're just naturally happy unless something in the now is not letting them. For example, a 2-year-old's hungry, or a baby's got a dirty diaper, or a 2-year-old notices that his mom's not around. All these things will bother him in the moment, but as soon as the mother comes back, what does the 2-year-old do? Happy all over again. When you change a baby's diaper, what happens? The baby returns to being happy, living in the moment. Same thing with food. What happens when you feed a baby or when you feed a toddler? They're happy again. It's their default state. As long as they have what they need in the moment, they are happy. So why is there so much unhappiness in the world if it is our default state, if we are born happy? This is another quote straight from his book that I love. It's parental or societal pressure, belief systems, and what I put in bold, really, unwarranted expectations come along and overwrite some of the original programming. The you who started out happily cooing in your crib, playing with your toes, gets caught up in a flurry of misconceptions and illusions. Happiness becomes a mysterious goal you seek, but you just can't quite grasp, rather than something simply there for you each morning when you open your eyes. I love that quote. Rather than something simply there for you each morning when you open your eyes. And I've talked about this on my podcast before too, but some of the happiest communities he's got in his book too are these really poor communities. See, these poor countries where there's just a lot of what we call in modern society wealth. They don't have this financial security. They don't worry about financial security or what we consider to be success. All they do is work enough each day to earn what they need so they can live their life. But beyond that, they prioritize their happiness and spend time with family and friends. Or they build community. We are an animal that lives with, we have to be with community. Of course, we need our time alone to ponder and to meditate, but we can't be alone all the time. We have to have community. So they work enough to have enough for their needs, and they spend the rest of their time prioritizing their happiness, spending time with who they love, family and friends. So the poorest communities are the happiest communities. So that just tells us right there that financial success is not a sign of happiness. And I've talked about this in other episodes, actually giving examples of some studies that have been done. So it's not the things, or what actually Mo says, the events that make us unhappy. It's the way we think about it that does. So it's the way that we think about the events or the things that makes us unhappy. Here's another quote from his book. Once the thought goes, the suffering disappears. Then he gives this example. When a rude person offends you, he can't really make you unhappy unless you turn the event into a thought, then allow it to linger in your brain, and then allow it to distress you. It's the thought, not the actual event, that's making you unhappy. It's very important to understand that. It's the thought, not the actual event, that makes us unhappy. And a lot of people are going to say that discomforts and pain in life are useless. Why do we have to have pain? Why do we have to have discomforts in life? But as he puts it, and as I believe, pain and discomforts of life are useful. And he goes on to say, painful feelings of anxiety can prompt us to seriously prepare for upcoming exams or presentations. Feelings of guilt or shame cause us to apologize and make amends, thereby restoring important social bonds. So these painful feelings actually help us to do something. Or these we can call stressful or acute stressful moments of anxiety will help us to prepare, not only prepare for the coming exam, but actually while we're in the exam or at the presentation, we do our best in that exam or that presentation. So these painful moments, but what happens when we're done with the exam or the presentation is done? What happens? That anxiety fades away. Same with the guilt, that painful feeling of guilt. Once we apologize and we say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? That shame just goes away. So as he continues to say, once the pain is no longer needed, it naturally fades away. And we can actually say this with all sorts of physical pains too. If we burn ourselves, if we touch something hot, if we touch a fire and we burn ourselves, that's our body telling us, get away from that. But then we'll have that pain to help us remember fire hurts. But once that's not needed anymore, that pain will go away and it naturally fades away. So physical, emotional, All these pains, they will go away once their job is done. So it naturally fades away, and he continues. But that's not the case with suffering. When we let it, emotional pain, even the most trivial kind, has the capacity to linger or resurface again and again, while our imaginations endlessly replay the reason for the pain. When we choose to let that happen, that's when we overwrite our default for happiness and reset the preference to needless suffering. Great quote, great part of his book. It was all the thinking in the world, until converted into action, has no impact on our reality of our lives. It does not change the events in any way. The only impact it has is inside each and every one of us, is the form, in the form of needless suffering and sadness. That's what Mo said, and I believe it. So all the thinking in the world, we can do all the thinking we want to do, but it has no impact on our reality. It doesn't change anything. The only impact is inside of us. And what does it do? It makes us suffer and have sadness and be sad for no reason. So for a while now, I've had problems with thinking too much. Well, I think too much always, but thinking too much about something that does not help me. This has been going on for a while, and what it does is causes me needless suffering and sadness. And the longer this goes, the easier it becomes to suffer and be sad. And as those who listen, we should know, that have listened to the last podcast, because I've explained this, because our physiology, the way our neurophysiology works, is it tries to find the most common pathways. So our neurons build pathways, and if we are constantly thinking about these moments and these feelings and these thoughts that causes needless suffering and sadness, those pathways become easier and easier for the brain to use, and they become more and more used because our brain is trying to do things as fast as possible, and it starts using those pathways. It becomes more and more difficult to think the opposite of needless suffering and sadness. So the more we do this, the more it becomes difficult, because it becomes a lot easier for our brains just to use those pathways. But we can change that. It's so important to say. The first part is probably the hardest part, but once we get that, once we're over that little hump, or that big hump for many people, it's all uphill from there. So we can change. And our physiology actually does change. We change. Those pathways of happy thoughts actually become a lot more facilitated, and it becomes a lot easier to actually see and think happy thoughts and have happy emotions. So what have I been thinking that is toxic? What is holding me back? What is causing me needless suffering and sadness? I'm not a good dad. That's the thought that comes back to me over and over and over again. I'm not a good dad. I feel so inadequate. There are times when I get to the point of not even wanting to be a parent anymore. It gets to that point. This constant feeling of an inadequacy, of not doing things right, of thinking that I was barely doing anything right, make it very difficult to act. I actually start to become very passive as a father. So I understand that fathers make mistakes. I have made my fair share, and I've had to ask for forgiveness on many occasions, but it gets to the point where my needless suffering and sadness make me feel that pretty much everything I do is a mistake, and that it is what makes me more and more passive as a father. I begin to think that everything will be better if I just don't do anything. So these are these thoughts that are keeping me from acting. So why do I share this with you today? Because it is real, and because I am real. And we need to understand that we are all making progress together. We're all working to become better people together. Emotional pain is as real as physical pain, and many times we prolong the pain by thinking and not acting. We don't prolong the pain, we turn it into unneeded suffering. So we heal today, we recuperate today, we build today, not by thinking, but by acting, just like any physical pain. Of course, besides chronic pain, that once its job is done, the pain should just fade away. If we continue to act, the emotional pain will also just eventually fade away. We won't suffer anymore. I know this is a lot easier to say than to do, but this is the whole reason why we are here, right? To become better people. And like you said before, and I reiterate it again today, right now, even though we don't like to admit it, pain and discomforts are good in life. They help us grow and help us learn. We are born happy, but unwarranted expectations we put on ourselves or we believe others put on us and other things in life turn us into people that look for happiness out there. It can be material things, it can be other things, but we look for happiness out there or anything, just things, when all we have to do is realize that happiness is right where it always was, inside of each and every one of us. So we are ecosystems of cells that are constantly looking for health, true health. Our ecosystem never stops moving towards health unless we actually put it in an environment, that being internal or external, that makes the body go into survival mode, or in other words, stress. An example being the thoughts that bring us sadness and suffering. That's a form of stress. So as I continue to try and open my eyes every morning and grasp happiness, don't look for it out there, but open my eyes every morning and grasp happiness that is already there. I hope that this helps you do the same this episode as we work together. You and I, to live our lives just a little better, one episode at a time. But don't stop there. This episode is for everybody. So if this episode is, you like this episode, you got something out of this episode, share it with a friend, a family member that could also get something out of this episode. Because if we're not sharing, we're not helping more and more people. And what I want to do is help as many people as I can reach their health potential. And that's done by following those 4 simple things that I talk about. Focusing on, of course, what I love, growing my own food. So let's do it together. Share this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Wellness Farmer Podcast.